Hello, this is Michael Hexter. Welcome to my Politics 2100 video cast here on YouTube. So this episode I'm calling a quote-unquote bipartisan maelstrom of narcissistic illusions pushes the U.S. towards fascism. So this is a response to a couple different pieces of recent information or media reports that have been commented upon by Young Turks and Majority Report, and I'm piecing together a composite picture of what's happening in our politics. I'm trying to create a map or somehow of what's happening in our politics, and from the point of view of also a psychological component. That's why the word narcissistic appears in the title of this video. And so and I tried to compact into the 100 characters I have in the title to what's really a more complicated, differentiated reality, but it revolves around the concept of narcissism and narcissistic illusion, okay, and self-serving illusions. So we have bipartisan, so there are two different types of narcissistic illusion in American politics currently. I mean, there's more than two, but in terms of the leadership and also in terms of parts of the bases of the two political parties, the Democrats and the Republicans. And so this is the immediate triggers for this are the reports on, or actually the actual event of Nancy Pelosi bringing on Lin Manuel Miranda and some singers from Hamilton in the context of a hearing about January the 6th and about preserving American democracy. And so that's just one piece. Okay, there are other moving pieces. I'm trying to, again, create a tapestry or a map of what's going on so you can locate yourself and understand in maybe more than two dimensions what's happening. So anyway, let me just quickly explain why I brought that particular piece up. So this is and this is something that baffled Sam Cedar when and also Judy Gold, his guest, and the other people on the Majority Report, and I saw immediately, or I see immediately, in my opinion, what's going on with Pelosi, or basically, I am not a big fan of Hamilton, frankly, of the musical, and also the politics of the musical. Hamilton is suspect, but furthermore, what I'm reporting on is simply, or what I'm reacting to, is the fact that this cultural artifact that is a part of the group identity of a certain neoliberal set of Democrats, center right or center, maybe even slightly center left, but mostly center and center right Democrats, and also part of the base of the Democratic Party is a fan of Hamilton, or certain segments of it are, and abstracting from the content of the musical and the fact that this was brought in as if to reinforce the very, very serious dangers regarding the potential for a coup, or the ongoing coup that the Republicans are staging against American democracy, and to bring in this cultural artifact that frankly, it's really a distraction from the serious business of what people in Congress should be doing, including the Speaker of the House, including and it's kind of a cultural touchstone for an insider group. Again, the politics of Hamilton, the politics of the use of Hamilton, the deployment of Hamilton, are things that I'm deeply critical of. I also think it's not a good musical. Okay, and unlistenable in certain regards, and just trying to be things that it's not, okay, in terms of the story, twisting the story in a way, and also twisting the actual history of Alexander Hamilton to fit a certain political narrative. But it's this cultural in-group that, so what I'm trying to comment on is that Pelosi, this is another sign that the leadership of the Democratic Party, including Pelosi, is just out of touch with the American people, and many of whom don't have any opinion about Hamilton. And but it's a very people who point to their love of Hamilton, love of the musical, and so forth and so on. It's very self-congratulatory. It's very that they somehow think this is it's a very woke. Okay, now this word woke has become very politicized, but it's that they are claiming a certain political sensitivity because Lin Manuel Miranda is Latino, and many of the actors are Latino or African American in the play, and that's how it's staged. That's how it's been interpreted as being sort of liberatory for people of color, and it's but it's very indirect, and it's simply a signifier. It's a virtue signaling, okay, and it's a virtue signaling that has negative political value for the Democrats, negative political value for Pelosi at this point in time, and Pelosi is shown in another context. This is again a tapestry, where she is out of touch with the idea of the insider trading of Congresspeople creating individual stocks. She said it's basically defended it outright to a reporter, and saying it's part of, quote unquote, the free market, when it's exactly the opposite. So she doesn't even know what the free market is. And she says that she's basically defending corruption, and unpopular corruption, because polling shows that most Americans, maybe 80-90% of the electorate, are against Congresspeople trading individual stocks, and she's defending it as if it's liberty for everybody, okay, but particularly, obviously, for members of Congress. So anyway, so this basically the investigation of January 6th and the plotting around January 6th is highly serious, highly consequential for the Republic and for the continuation of American democracy. And here we have someone who is involved in a world where she's not in touch with really how she appears, or if she doesn't care how she appears. And she's also the leader of the Democrats in Congress. It's a disaster. Okay, that literally what she says and what she does, and then it's disastrous for the party, and for that party being the defender now of democratic institutions, with small d democratic institutions, and within the U.S. government, and not independent of party, and so that she engages in this self-indulgence in a number of cases now is a sign of what I'm calling narcissistic illusion. So these are illusions that, you know, that she's so sensitive and so woke, and so because she likes Hamilton and she allowed these singers to sing, and, you know, this is such a broadening experience and so forth and so on. It's very distant and bourgeois and, you know, haute bourgeois, but in a way that's, you know, whatever. It's not. It's you know, fine. She's acting the fine lady, okay, and who is culturally aware and culturally, you know, and at the same time showing off in a way that's, you know, distasteful, okay, and politically destructive, okay, for her party and for her. And so that's one set of, and there are other people, Chuck Schumer, Joe Biden. Again, I've talked in other videos recently how Joe Biden is, you know, has a illusion, is a prisoner of illusions about Washington institutions, about the Senate, and he acts as if that his version that he wants to believe of how the Senate works, how the GOP is, that those things really exist, okay? That these are illusions, narcissistic illusions of his, when in fact they are totally out of sync with, or largely out of sync with, the real GOP and the real Democratic Party and the real political situation we find ourselves in. So not only Pelosi, Biden, also a prisoner of narcissistic illusions, okay? And then, so in a different set of narcissistic illusions, a different kind of narcissistic illusions, we have obviously the GOP and Trump, and here we have a more, let's say, childlike, but also politically effective. So it's a combination of politically organized and effective, but still delusional. Not only illusions, but downright delusions. Okay, collective delusions on the side of the GOP as they are trying to encase the collective ego of the right wing, and in particular, and the white minority right wing that that the GOP is now basically composed, is their base and is their constituency, unfortunately placed strategically within the electorate, within the way that our political system is, in ways that give them much more power than their, you know, person by person, than people who live in urban areas, and you know, and people who live in large states with large populations and so forth and so on. And also through the way the system has been gerrymandered, you know, those people are disempowered, while the people in rural areas, who tend to be whiter and older, are empowered in that situation. But anyway, but the illusions that, so we have an enormously, basically sensitive, narcissism is a combination of grandiosity and sensitivity to slight or to defeat. So here we have in Donald Trump an individual that is so allergic to defeat, so allergic to recognizing his own finitude, his own weakness, the fact that he lost a election, and that he creates a whole series of illusions and delusions around, some of which is strategic. So it's like, it's hard to know if it's straight delusion or if it's just simply he understands enough about U.S. politics and about this base that he's playing, and also that he is being helped, okay, by a facilitating media that is creating a group psychosis, or a group around the election, around the electoral system. But it's a psychosis that is self-serving to continue on this road of a coup, or an undermining of the democracy, the small d democracy in the United States, and creating a minoritarian system, a neo-fascist system that is where that installs basically state legislatures who have already themselves have been the product of gerrymandering in certain states as being powerful enough to wipe out the votes of voters, and basically to elect as presidents or other people based on their own whims. Okay, and so it's a combination of illusion and delusion and political calculation but it's insistence really on it's a sense of entitlement, and which is part of narcissism, and that the entitlement there, that they feel entitled to power, and entitled to use violence, and entitled to run away from the consequences of their own action, and entitled to so there's a series of sense of entitlement and sense of that Trump symbolizes for the base, okay, his base, and and his popularity, though again he's potentially maybe going to be replaced by some younger figure, some other person who it's now being contested whether he in fact is the leader of this group that is under this group psychosis, or group illusion or delusion, or self-serving illusion, or illusion that supports a sense of enormous entitlement, okay, in terms of politics. So anyway, we have this clash of two different groups with two different types of narcissistic illusion, one of which is unfortunately, is based, the GOP version is based on they actually have a plan. It's actually, there's a strategy which is coherent with their illusions, so that they will be able to create a jury rigged system that is not like the system that we've had, but a system that is going to be an authoritarian system, or a neo-fascist system where arbitrary power is delegated to certain individuals and certain groups of individuals who live in certain areas, and meanwhile they project exactly the opposite on their. They accuse the Democrats of exactly what they are doing. In other words, they are claiming the Democrats are doing the thing that they're actually doing, and the things that the Republicans are actually doing, and the Democrats are so scared and so they cede so much of the ground of the sense of entitlement, or the sense of rights, really, to the Republicans, that they treat the Republicans as, quote unquote, the real Americans that they claim to be, the real white rural Americans, mostly male dominated, patriarchal, so forth and so on, but that they, gun wielding, so forth and so on, that they play into, and they allow the Republicans to play out, and the media to play out, so forth and so on, this illusion of them being the real Americans, whether in fact we're all the real Americans, okay, and that they, but they support this mythology, the mythology that is supportive of, or is the entering wedge for this coup that's that's taking place, coup against the series of innovations in our system that allowed people direct election of senators, it allowed, but also they still have this filibuster and so forth and so on that keeps the power invested in a small minority of the population, and in particular institutions that tend to be controlled by Republicans or that the Republicans have a leg up on, even though that they get far fewer votes than the Democrats. So this what I'm calling a maelstrom of these two different types of illusion. So basically, the one type of illusion on the side of the Democrats prevents them from fighting and from challenging the Republicans in their illusions, challenging their idea that they are the real Americans, and that a gun-wielding individual somehow has more rights than someone who doesn't wield a gun, and that that sense of entitlement to power that the Republicans project, in various forms, at various levels, and through cultural gestures and performatively, and performatively in the sense that where all social reality is performed, and that basically the Republicans perform a certain Americanness, that the Democrats do not challenge. The Democrats allow them to have this, and that's circling back to the beginning of this video. It's true that Hamilton is a sort of a very stilted effort to turn the story of Alexander Hamilton into sort of more of a multicultural or multi-ethnic mythology about the United States. But it's a very flawed, and in both as a play and as a musical, but also as a learning tool, and because it's not historically correct, and it's not, and it's not that, I don't find that inspiring personally. Not the impulse to create this myth is fine, or create this vision, let's say, but the vision is a contemporary vision. It's not a vision located in the early Republic. The early Republic, was based on slaveholding and had all kinds of problems, and the machinery of our republic still is very old and very and requires a great deal of revision. So this the real America that exists now is already this multi-ethnic, multi-racial, multicultural entity that simply needs to be reflected in our politics and in our mythology, not our mythology transposed back to the 18th century or the 18th century, but also but basically a mythology that's about our current, or at least maybe mythology is the wrong word, but a discourse that is about our contemporary lives and our contemporary composition of our population, people who live here now. And so all of this is in these figures, these political leaders, and these groupings that are swathed in their different illusions, about each other and about politics and about what to do in our politics. They are not addressing the real issues that are facing this 300x, million people that live in the United States. And so, and definitely the future demands that we need to be addressing, the basic, most top in my mind, climate change, okay, and climate chaos, impending climate chaos. So, and these illusions are and people are, interacting with each other based on them, okay, and that needs to stop very quickly. And I don't know if this video is any contribution to that stopping, but I think I'm trying to give you a sense of what the reality is that politicians should be grappling with, and also the myths that they shouldn't be engaging with, and or if they engage with them, they should be dismissing them, those myths, as myths, and as and anyway, so it's and I guess so these illusions that, and we have more graphic, there's another video that was very disturbing recently of a man who was an associate of Steve Bannon, who was in the hospital, who had COVID-19 and had been intubated, and he, from his hospital bed, was blaming Democrats and Joe Biden for his illness. And it was just again, I'm using the word narcissistic, but it was this man felt entitled to blame everybody else for his problems, not his own choices, including not getting vaccinated for against COVID, and also the policies of his associates and the plans of his associates to use the COVID epidemic as a political tool to try to damage the other party, and so forth and so on. And that he felt entitled just to blame other people, blame anyone else but himself. And so, and that sense of entitlement needs to be challenged. It needs to be exposed. It needs to be with all sympathy or whatever for him being sick or not being sick. It's like he's in part responsible for him being sick, and he needs to, if he doesn't reckon with it, he needs to be dismissed as a speaker, someone who can say something about the pandemic and say something about U.S. politics has any importance. And so this level, the people need to grapple with how the level of grievance, the level of of immaturity, deep immaturity that's being expressed in these illusions, in these swathing, people trying to swathe themselves in a blanket or a suit of armor, okay, that is based on illusions, okay, and that needs to be penetrated, dismissed, dispelled in different ways for different parties, for different groupings. And that's what I'm trying to do here in this video, is to at least start mapping out what that looks like from a point of view from a human point of view. So I'll try to put links in the description box to videos that support this, at least that are the different events that were being recorded by different media outlets, and that are part of this tapestry that I'm trying to weave together here. Anyway, if you are liking what I'm saying here, or like at least the attempts I'm making here, please like this video, and also please subscribe to my channel, and please also comment below if you have any criticisms or differences of opinion or supportive comments. about, you know, this hypothesis or theory about, or the map that I'm trying to create of, you know, these different types of illusions and how they're keeping our politicians from facing the reality, okay, of what's going on. So I look forward to seeing you in the next video.